Hello and welcome back to Girl Ascending. Today we're going to start looking at the Minor Arcana, starting with the Suit of Wands. So we're going to be starting off by looking at the King of Wands. Now, as we can see, this is a male figure clearly sitting in their power. There is clear authority. We can see that he is holding tightly to his wand, his staff, he's wearing his crown, and in the background we can see salamanders on the throne and also at his feet. And this is the creature that is most aligned with the element of fire. We can see lots of green and lots of red on the card. There's that idea of everything being alive and lush. And if we can see that the King of Wands is looking directly out, there's that idea that he knows what he is doing. He is powerful. There's a stability to his confidence. There is a mastery over the passions that he may be feeling inside. We can see that red hair, the red robe, but this is someone who is very much in charge of themselves. And when we're thinking about this card, we really want to be thinking of the idea that, we're mastering our passions, things that we feel strongly about, our urges, that we are the ones with the control over them. And when we look at this card in the upright position, we are also understanding the power of our own personal charisma, that we are someone that attracts people naturally, and that perhaps we are about to go forth into having a kind of spiritual experience as well. And then when this card shows up in the reverse, it's the idea of feeling disempowered, that we've lost that spirituality. We're feeling a bit more unstable. Maybe there's an element of arrogance creeping in, but we've still got that element of ferocity coming through. And it's the idea that perhaps someone could be being too ferocious towards us, or even too demanding on our time, on how we feel about ourselves, which is where the idea that maybe we've kind of lost touch with our own power also comes in. But this is a card full of powerful masculine energy, both in the upright position and in the reverse. We move on next to the Queen of Wands. Now, she is all about that entrepreneurial innovator energy. And we can see when we look at her throne that she has got this little black cat. She's got that personal magic very clear in the forefront, sitting in front of her, and that we can also see she has lions on the back of her throne and also on either side of her throne as well. So we can see that she is looking in both directions at once. And it's that idea that there is a spiritual maturity, that we can bring our dreams into reality. And we can see on one side, on the left hand side, as we look at the card, that we can see those pyramids in the distance, the idea of that spirituality. And then on the other side, we can see a flat, more snowy landscape. So we are bringing the dreamy world into reality. We are living in our confidence, but there is really a strong sense of magic connected to this card as well. An idea of being a visionary, of moving and shaking and really bringing things into reality. We've got mindfulness, and we are being able to create a passionate vision. So we need to focus on our dreams in order to bring them into reality. So that is the Queen of Wands in the upright position. And when we're looking at her in the reverse, it's the idea of jealousy, of disconnecting from that inner vision and looking around us instead, rather than looking inwards and failing to see our true magic because we're too focused on someone else. And it's that real disconnection and doubt of our own magic. There can also be the idea in the reverse with the Queen of Wands of being too passionate, of being passionate almost to a fault, and this can lead to a sense of aggression as well. So we really want to make sure that when the Queen of Wands comes up in the reverse, that we are not disconnecting. And moving on now to the Knight of Wands. So whenever we encounter a Knight card in the Minor Arcana, we really want to remember that it's all about speed and about movement, but applying in different situations. So when we're thinking of the Knight of Wands, we've really got a strong warrior energy. It is about self-empowerment, bold action, and still that idea of being on a spiritual quest. We can see the pyramids at the bottom of the card, which calls back to the Queen of Wands. And then when we look at the Knight himself, he is obviously calling back to that strong masculine energy from the King of Wands. We've got the red plumage coming out of his helmet, the red horse, and also the salamanders on his tabard. And this card is really about empowering ourselves to bring what we want from the mystical realm into reality. So it's all about engaging with the reality, engaging with a real life cause that we are trying to manifest, particularly in career, but it can also be applicable to relationships as well. And when we see this card coming up in the reverse position, it means that we're moving a little bit too hastily, that perhaps our efforts are scattered rather than focused, that we are maybe feeling a bit disengaged from our purpose or even discouraged. It can also mean a delay. So it could either be a physical delay, a journey delay, or it could be a delay in manifesting what we truly want. But this card is all about action and being fearless and really going for what we want. The next card that we're going to meet is the Page of Wands, and now when we see a Page card come up in the Minor Arcana, we want to remember that it carries a very similar energy to the Fool. So it's that idea of naivety, something a little bit more childlike, but it's also a beginning card, an opening card. And in the case of the Page of Wands, we really want to be thinking of that messenger energy. So it's enthusiasm, it's a passionate beginning. I always think of him as being aligned to perhaps the god Hermes. It's that real sense of movement and progression and having a message that we are going to discover something amazing in the near future. And we can see thematically a lot of the themes that are carried through from previous cards. We can see the red feather in his cap. We can see the salamanders on his outfit as well. And the Page of Wands is clearly looking forward into the future, looking up to the sky even. So we've got that idea of spirituality coming through strongly, and of course once again the pyramids in the background. So this card is really about that eagerness. We're waiting to discover something new. We're off on a new journey. It could be spiritually, emotionally, a new relationship starting, a new business venture, but something great is about to begin. And then when we meet the Page of Wands in the reverse, it's the idea of a blockage, that perhaps there's some indecision. We kind of know what we want, but we're not quite getting started, or perhaps there's something complex in the beginning that is causing a bit of an issue. It could also be that sense of something being a bit one-sided, you know, that perhaps a new relationship is starting, but the spark isn't quite there, or someone has approached us with a new job opportunity, but we're not quite sure if it's something that we really want to take on yet or not. But when we're looking at the Page of Wands, we want to remember that real sense of a fresh start, a new beginning. Moving away now from the Court cards, we're coming on to the Pip cards, which are the cards that are numbered through 2 until 10. So 10 is always the completion of a cycle in tarot. And when we're looking at the 10 of Wands, it's really that idea of a burden. So this card actually has a more negative connotation in the upright position than the reverse, but we'll get to that in a moment. So it's that idea that we are feeling completely overwhelmed, overcommitted, overburdened, that we're looking forward to some degree of fulfillment, to a conclusion of a big project, but it has taken a lot of stress, a lot of hardship in order for us to get there. And it's that idea that perhaps we might have maybe disconnected with something along the way. We can see that the figure holding the wands is almost looking through them like a jail cell, you know, that we've had to really disconnect from ourselves in order to reach that end goal, and that we really have been feeling the strain. And when this card comes up in the reverse, it's that idea that it's time to release these burdens, that we've got to let go, that we need to ask for help, that perhaps we need to share this work. And it's also the idea that it is okay to say no. And I think that is something that a lot of us struggle with, that we don't always feel that that is an option for us. But this card, when in the reverse, reminds us that it absolutely is. And when we see this card in the reverse, it's also this idea that perhaps what we are waiting for is still waiting for us, but there's just been a slight delay. But this really is the big energy that we want to get from this card, is the idea of burdens and how we are dealing with them. Moving on now to the Nine of Wands. So the energy of this card is all about resilience. And we can also see when we look at this card that the colours are starting to change. So we've got less of that idea of the red, fiery energy, and we're coming into more of that idea of blue, of green, that idea of things starting to move forward, that we're not necessarily in that fiery, passionate stage, that we're doing the hard graft stage now. So it's that idea of almost being there, that final push, that we need to trust in ourselves, that we can fit in that final piece of the puzzle. And we can see the 9 wands very clearly, but the figure is holding on to that 9th wand very tightly, almost in a mistrustful way. They're not quite sure, but this card is reminding us that we have to just keep going, that we are almost there, and that at the end of it rather, will relate that amazing relief. You know, we can clearly see that green pastures in the background. And when we're thinking of this card in the upright position, it's all about that idea of finishing a project, of getting something done. However, when we see the 9 of Wands in the reversed position, it's that idea that a project is being blocked. And this could be due to a number of different reasons. It could be that we are absolutely exhausted. It could be that we are battling with ourselves, that perhaps there is some adversity coming through. It could be mental, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be on a number of different levels, but that we are standing in our own way to prevent getting to that final stage. And this card is really reminding us in the reverse that even if we feel like giving up, that we mustn't. So the 9 of Wands is all about reminding us of our own personal resilience, that whatever we are trying to make it through, whatever situation, personal or professional, that we can get there as long as we just persevere and give that final push. Moving along, now we've got the 8 of Wands, and the real energy that we can feel from this card, even without knowing the meaning, just by looking at it, is that sense of speed, of swiftness, that there is something happening and it's going to be happening very, very quickly, that idea of sudden movement. And when this card comes up, it normally means that there is some kind of news. So it could be news about something that you've been waiting for, an important letter, an important message, or it could be something totally unexpected that is going to change things around in a big way. It can also be that idea that actually the world around us is pushing us forward, is saying, right, come on, it's time to move forward. We've got to get to the completion of the project that we're looking towards. And it's also that idea that we ourselves can take it upon ourselves to take that action, you know, to really move forward, you know, come on, now is the time to get moving, get going and make a start. And then when we see the 8 of Wands, coming up in the reverse, it's that idea that maybe things are going too fast, that we're feeling a bit overwhelmed, a bit out of control, and that we need to take a pause in order to ground ourselves. It could also be that sensation of things being a bit nebulous or up in the air, that we are not really sure what's going on or what's happening, and that we need to take the time to ground ourselves in order to fully feel how far we've come and how we need to progress. But whether in the upright or in the reverse position, the key energy that we are feeling from the 8 of Wands is that idea of movement, of speed, of a message coming through. So the next card that we're going to be meeting in the suit of Wands is the 7 of Wands, and this really is a card all about defiance, and it follows on very clearly from the card before. And there's that idea of physicality, of physical exertion coming through, that we are determined, that we are defending ourselves in whatever way that may be manifesting, and that we do have our own power, even if it may seem that we don't, and that we are defending ourselves, our position, because we are in the right in whatever we are doing. And we can see from the figure that there is that look of exertion on their face, that they are straddling almost 2 worlds. So this is clearly a card of challenge as well as of defiance, and facing up to that challenge in the upright position. And then when we're meeting this card in the reverse, it's that idea of falling, of moving backwards, that perhaps we're losing ground, that we are feeling anxiety or indecision, and that we know that we are perhaps in a bit of a weaker position. However, it can also mean that we are overcoming the challenges that are coming towards us. So when we've got the idea of feeling weaker, it means more sort of a spiritual weakness, pardon me. But in the reverse position, it can also mean that we have kind of stepped up and we have defeated the challenges that were coming towards us, and that we are really beginning to feel that sense of power returning to us. Moving on through the Pip cards of the suit of Wands, we have now come to the 6 of Wands, and the real energy of this card is victory. And it's very clear by the laurel wreath that is both on the figure's head and also on the wand that they are carrying. And we've got this idea of returning to sitting in our power. So if we look at this figure, they're dressed in a very similar manner to both the King and Queen of Wands as well. So we've got that return to the idea of the red and the yellow colouring, that idea of passion and fire and mastery over ourselves. And it's that real idea in the upright position that we are seeing success, that we are optimistic about the future, that we are kind of in our flow, that we know where we're going, that we feel really, really confident in the position that we are in at the moment in whatever aspect we may be querying the cards about. And it can also mean that success has manifested itself for us in terms of recognition. So perhaps we are becoming well known for something, not necessarily celebrity or fame, but it's certainly that kind of energy. And when we are then meeting this card in the reverse, it's the idea that perhaps we are losing that kind of confidence, that we're not actually feeling quite as sure of where we're going, that perhaps we're feeling a bit lackluster, or we're not really putting in the effort that we know we need to in order to get the results that we want. And it's also that idea that perhaps we're being a bit too prideful. And if you look at the expression on the horse's face, he's almost giving the rider that side eye, saying, you know, that pride comes before a fall. So we want to be a bit careful that we're not getting too overly confident in ourselves when this card appears to us in the reverse. But the real energy of the Six of Wands is that idea of victory and success. Moving forward now to the Five of Wands. So the energy of this card is really all about the idea of a challenge. So as we can see from all the figures, we can see that there is a definite idea of a clash going on. So there is a degree of tension, of conflict, and perhaps this is manifesting in a work situation, that maybe there is a clash of ideas, of differing ideologies. But there's the idea that there are a lot of people involved in whatever the situation is that we are querying the cards about, and that there is the sensation of a concentrated effort, that there are multiple people trying to make something happen, but perhaps they're not all going about it in the same way, in the best way, and this is leading to tension. And then when we are finding the Five of Wands in the reverse, it's the idea that whatever this conflict was is perhaps coming now to a resolution. There still may be some degree of complication, but it's that idea of almost like a cessation, that for the time being everyone is agreeing to take a pause in whatever is being fought over, in whatever people are fighting about, in order to create a period of calm. And that perhaps there is some degree of a spiritual resolution. However, it doesn't always mean that things are being resolved. It's more that idea that things are moving forward on a pathway to being resolved. So when we're looking at this card, we really want to feel that energy of exertion, of things being a bit challenging, of clashes, and kind of navigating the best way through these challenges, both on a personal and a professional level. But with the Suit of Wands, it's really that sense of that fire, of things being challenging, but not always necessarily seeing them as a negative, but rather seeing that spark of how to then progress forwards. This then leads us nicely into our next card, which is the Four of Wands, which is all about prosperity, the idea of working hard towards something, even if it's been challenging or difficult, however that may have manifested, and really then getting that sense of harvesting, of taking stock, of standing back and realizing the conclusion that we have come to. And this card is brightly yellow. We can see a happy couple in the middle, and although this card is commonly associated anecdotally with marriage, if you look at how A.E. Waite conceived the deck, actually the two figures are two women, which of course again to pertain to marriage, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a card about relationships or marital success. It can be about marriage in a much broader spectrum, so it could be about two things coming together on a professional level, a relationship level, but even on a personal level as well, that you have conquered that shadow side of yourself in order to create something of stability, you know, that we've got that now stable passion, we have reached a milestone and we can really celebrate. And it's that real idea of celebration in a domestic sense too, that we have created a sense of peace and stability for ourselves through our passions, and we're really enjoying that sense of prosperity. And then when we visit this card in the reverse, it's that idea that there's some sense of disharmony, that perhaps the foundations that we were building on weren't quite as firm as we thought, and that we need to start rebuilding and rethinking in where we want to go next. And this is particularly true in a personal reading, if that is what you're querying the cards about, and that perhaps if this card is coming up in the reverse, we need to take that time to heal and rebuild before progressing any further. And now it is time to meet the Three of Wands, and this card is all about the sensation of opportunity, that there are things out there in the world that we are looking towards to bring closer into our own lives, that real sensation of personal growth. So we have found what we are passionate about, what we love to do, and we're really focusing in on that in order to bring in a sensation of growth, particularly when it comes to our professional lives. And we can see that we've got the red cloak calling back to earlier cards, but we've also now got that green coming in as well, which comes through from earlier cards. So we've got the court cards and the pip cards now coming together to really show us that we are going to expand our horizons, and that we are going to be seeing the result of the fruit of our labours, very similar to the Four of Wands as well, but that we are going to do it on a much wider sense. So whereas the Four of Wands was about domesticity, this is about the world in a much bigger sense, and it can also pertain to perhaps travel or going outside of our comfort zone as well. And then when we are seeing the Three of Wands in the reverse, it's about a sense of limitation. So perhaps we're not kind of seeing as far as we need to in order to manifest what we are looking for. It can also be that sensation of delay, you know, that we have got drive, that we've got ambition, but we're not focusing it in the right way in order to move ourselves forward. It can also mean as well that perhaps if you had a personal delay, professional delay, that you are now back in action. So even when that card is coming up in the reverse, it's a sign that things are actually going to start picking up and moving forward for you again in the near future. But the Three of Wands is all about opportunity, new ventures, focused passion, and where you are going to go next. And now we come to the Two of Wands, and this card quite clearly is all about choice. We've got two very definite sides, two very definite options, and we can see the red and the white flowers in the bottom left hand corner of the card, which takes us back to the Major Arcana, the idea of the purity but also the vitality, both of those two positives coming together. And we can see that the figure is holding the world in his hands, that idea that there is going to be something really big coming forth for us, that we're making bold choices, we're making definite decisions, and that we are completely balanced in what we're seeing and balanced in our focus, because we have that real confidence that we know where we're going and that we have mastery over ourselves, which is something that is very important in the suit of Wands. And if we look further into the card, it is a bit trickier to see, but in the sort of midsection on the left hand side, we can just see some ships coming into the harbour, and it's that real idea that an outside influence is coming in order to help us accomplish what we need to do. So there is that idea of partnership. So we are making the right choices, but we are also aligning ourselves with the right people in order to accomplish what it is that we need to do. And then when we see this card coming up in the reverse, it's that sensation once again of a delay, that perhaps we are hesitating, or perhaps the plans aren't coming together as we wanted, or perhaps we are, poorly planning. There can also be that idea again of a sexual imbalance. Now, we haven't spoken about this before, but we will when we come to the Ace of Wands, which is our final card. But when we're thinking about the wands, we do want to think as well about that idea of a sexual spark. Obviously the wands itself is a magical symbol, but also a phallic symbol. So when we're meeting wands in the reverse, but especially with the Two of Wands, it's that idea that perhaps there is a sexual imbalance as well, some degree of stagnation. This brings us on nicely to our final card, which is the Ace of Wands. Now this can be put with the Court cards or with the Pip cards, whichever you choose, but I feel that it rounds off our session nicely by putting it at the end. Now we can see very clearly the phallic symbol on the Ace of Wands, so it's that real idea of sexual desire, that sexual energy coming through strongly, but the overall energy of this card is enterprise, and it's that idea of energy, of ideas. It could be a spiritual awakening, or it could be potential in a wide variety of areas as well. So this could be professional as well as personal, but it's that idea that something big is coming and that we literally hold that potential in our hands, that it is ours to take control of and manifest, almost like a magic wand, I suppose. And then when we are meeting this card in the reverse, it's the idea that we have that potential, but we've not really worked out how to use it yet. There's some kind of block. It could be sort of a restlessness, or maybe a block on another level, a sexual block, a professional one, that we have an idea, but we're not quite sure how to bring it into reality, that we're feeling maybe a bit uninspired. There's a sense of lack of motivation. But overall, the Ace of Wands is really about that spark, that creativity, and all aces are about beginnings when it comes to the Minor Arcana. But when we are thinking of wands and that fiery energy, we really want to make sure that we are connecting with that inspiration within ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be entrepreneurial, when these cards come up, but it's that real idea that inside of us, the wands are reminding us that we have that personal potential, and it is available for us to tap into at any time to help us manifest and accomplish the goals that we want. Okay, thank you very much for joining me. Next video is going to be on the Suit of Cups, which is all about emotions and relationships. So please stay tuned for that.